Hey everybody, this is DM Mike, and this is Next Campaign Diary for DOIP. This is session 3 of DOIP. This session wraps up the Dwarven Excavation, and then moves surprisingly into Axeholm. Not Nomengard, not anywhere else, not even the second tier of quests. They leapt right to the third tier, one of the last quests in that third tier, Axeholm. And it was a night of a lot of surprises. We went for 5 hours. Here are some of the statistics from that evening. As you can see, there were a lot of 20s rolled, a lot of natural ones rolled, and a lot of bad jokes. I'm looking at. I was only like 4 bad jokes. I feel like they felt like so much more that evening. But I mean, like, what's that? Almost 13 natural 20s in just like 4 hours. 4.5 hours, right? It was kind of insane, the amount of stuff that was going on. But we started the night at the Dwarven Excavation. They had to finish off the fight they started from the last session, which was against those kind of cursed statues of Abathor that had dead dwarven acolytes inside. Anything now that enters that temple is not going to leave, right? So Abathor is not going to let you go. You are a prisoner. So they had to fight it out there with the help of the dwarves. I actually started the evening using a music track from Star Trek Enterprise, Disc 3, number 18, I believe it is. Runs about 7 minutes long, and I just started the evening with that. One thing I've been learning as I've watched Star Trek Enterprise, which is one of my favorite Star Treks, is this idea of escalation. And I've been trying to do that more and more with a lot of my combat encounters and everything. Is one thing starts, but then it gets a little bit worse, and a little bit worse, and new things start to happen, right? So I kind of started that evening with them starting to fight these statues, but at the other end of the hallway where they left Dazlin, or Dazlin, whatever this dwarf name is, to watch the door, he heard the fighting. So he starts to go down the hallway, but then suddenly the main door behind him, which they locked and closed because sentinels were outside, begins to open. And what was happening on the outside was that there were 5 sentinels, 2 of which turned into like these little diamonds and revealed 2 little locking mechanisms on each side of the door that they attached to. And that allowed the sentinels to get inside the temple because they wouldn't lock themselves out of their own temple, right? So those 2 became keys, and the last 3 went in to attack. And they fought Dazlin, while the rest of the heroes, including Norbus, is that right, Norbus, were fighting the statues. And it was pretty, it was a fine encounter as far as encounters go. The statues couldn't move very much. I think they had like a 20 to 25 speed. And they could hit pretty hard, but it's just one of those things last night. The first part of the adventure, I was rolling really, really bad. I just wasn't hitting anything. And I know the gnome was having, I think it's Grick or Glim or I don't know, Shorty Pants, whatever. He was having a hard time. He was kind of running all over the place because he felt very, very vulnerable. But it was, in the end, kind of uneventful. They managed to destroy the statues, and the dwarf managed to get his ancestors' bones and transport him out of there. When they got to the front door, though, however, all the sentinels were dead, but Dazlin was also at 0 hit points. Now, I didn't add this to my, initiative. I didn't bother with that. That was a story element that was happening kind of off screen, right? So I wasn't going to go back and forth and try to roll or use all that initiative and all those combat encounters. I just wanted to focus on the players. Well, they decided to camp out that night, get away from the temple, and the gnome and the knight went back in just to scour one more time, just get their eyes on things. They took some gems and jewels and different rock types because the mining consortium back in Phandalin said, hey, look, if you can find some unusual stone, bring it back, we'll pay you some money. So they found some cool items there, and they went camping. And it's that point, pretty much, where the players said, hey, let's go to the only place the DM hasn't prepped. And to be fair, they had talked about going to Axeholm even before this, and it was kind of in the back of my mind. This is the one time I did not listen to myself, to be honest with you. I just didn't, there was even up to game day, about 2 hours before game time, I had a thought. It was like, Mike, just roll some initiative, get some ghouls lined up, get the tokens out, and just at least in case they go in that direction. And for whatever the reason, I don't know why, I said, nope, I have prepped. Don't look at this. Don't pause the video here, guys, if you're in my campaign. I had prepped all this stuff, pages and pages. They're not going to go. I have a feeling they're not going to go because there wasn't really 100% commitment the last time we played. It was just this talk, and I just felt like maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just talk. Well, it's exactly what they did. So panic, right? Just panic pulls in. And I think I'm more panicky about this kind of stuff because dungeon crawls are... they slow the game down as it is, and if you're not fully prepped for them, that even causes more problems. Now, I had read the adventure. I had the adventure ready to go inside Tabletop Simulator. I had the Fog of War. The tokens are easy to pull in. It's just the mechanics of a dungeon crawl that get me a little frustrated. Even when I'm prepped, like it slows the game down. But in this case, I had read the dungeon crawl once, back probably in February when I was thinking about running this adventure. And I knew that at some point I had to revisit it, but I didn't think it'd be last Friday. This turned out to be really a wonderful thing, if you ask me, because the players were on fire, I was on fire, and the dice were on fire. The dice gave us so many close calls by the skin of their teeth. They got through so many different obstacles during the crawl with Axeholm. Now, before they went to Axeholm, though, like I said, they camped out. The dwarves were like, no, don't go to Axeholm. And I was just playing them as NPCs. I wasn't trying to deter the players. If they were going to go there, I was going to be ready for it. I was going to make it happen. But, naturally, they're like, don't go there. The place is crazy. It's a banshee. There's all kinds of different things there. Like, we're not even going to go there. So they played it up, I think, as they would. But they were ready to go back to Phandalin. They wanted to bury the ancestor, and they had to go back because they're part of the Miners Guild and whatnot. One of the players, the one that I never can remember the name or the race, did something kind of nice for them. She had blessed the bones of his ancestor to also prevent them from ever coming back as undead or anything like that. It was a nice little gesture. So the dwarf took off his glove and gave her his signet ring, and the dwarves pledged, hey, anytime you need us for whatever, the next quest you go on, whatever Phandalin ends up, wherever they throw you to, if we can, we will come with you and fight for you. So they made a connection there with an NPC and got a little bit of a reward there, and someone they can trust back in Phandalin. Now, here's one thing I changed, guys. You don't have to do this, but I actually shut down Nomengard. They had the 3 quests, right? They chose 2 out of 3. That third one, to me, things are moving at real time. While you're over here doing this, things are going down somewhere else, right? So Nomengard is just kind of a quest now that's just kind of closed itself off. Carson, the old sheriff in Phandalin, went ahead and took a couple of his men and went out there to deal with it when he learned the players had gone to the Dwarven Excavation after Umbridge Hill. Now, that's, I don't know, you can have your players do everything. I felt like, eventually things need to shut down. The options need to close. And I think that helps. It really does. I think it helps me as a DM, so I don't have to worry about that right now. But the next time I play it too, it can end up, playing out very, very differently. So I don't know. It's just a recommendation if you're thinking about it. Like, take those first 3, the second 3, plan them out, and once they do 2, well, this one either resolves itself or someone else comes and takes care of it. That's just I don't know, just some small bit of advice. But we're off to Axeholm. I keep putting an extra L in there, Axeholm. It just sounds better for some reason, so I'm probably going to say it wrong throughout this entire video, so don't worry about that. So how do I do this? How do you approach this when you're not ready, And this just tests all a DM's improv skills, in the moment kind of decision making. And one thing, though, I think I did that helped was I use, like I said, in many of my videos, I use audio, a lot of environmental effects. I don't use music very often. So I decided to use a biodome or an ambience that I had created like 6 years ago that was just thunder and wind, right? That's all it was, like distant thunder and this kind of gentle wind that was going past. And I think that's what really added to the experience that night. It helps me as a DM to get into the mood, but it helps also the players. There's something about thunder. Thunder just always works. Now, I changed a few things at Axeholm. The door there, the solid door, they can't even get through because it's latched on the other side. I put debris in front of it. I don't know, it just felt like a natural thing that things would just kind of crumble and there'd be all this kind of stuff in front of the door. The Porculus was obviously down. They couldn't get through that. So 2 of my players, the 2 smallest we have, the gnome and the halfling, jumped through one of the arrow slits. At first, it was only a halfling. He felt like she felt like he could do it. Like, no problem. I'll take care of this. Goes in there, can't see anything because there's no dark vision. Axeholm is completely dark. At least that's how I played it. Pitch black. Goes in there, finds a change to Porculus or pork. I never can say this word right. I'm going to call it the pork. Tries to open it, cannot, fails all the strength checks, just not strong enough. So she says, hey, I need help, right? So who else can help? No one else can fit through these arrow slits. So the gnome hops through. Now together, they roll with advantage with strength check, and they manage to get this thing up. Now, the thing is making god-awful noise. I mean, just so much noise is resonating from these chains that have never been touched in so long. The rust and just the jangling of the chains, well, that attracts the ghouls, the two closest ghouls that start wandering down the hallway towards their position. And they could hear it. They could hear these things because they were trying to be quiet too. But the chains, look, you touch a chain, it's going to make noise, right? They can hear them coming. They get the porculus up and they start pulling it up one by one. They get it about 2 feet off the ground. And then that's when the ghouls show up at the door. Nobody else can come in to help them. And they end up dropping the porculus, the pork, in hopes to kind of fight off these ghouls or get the hell out of there, right? Well, outside, the two heroes that are out there, the only ones who can't fit through the arrow slits, are watching this thing go up and up and up and up. And at that same moment, as it went up, they tried to go under. Just as on the inside, they let go. It was a dicey moment. The porculus or pork would impale them. There's just no way. It would impale them, if not outright kill them once it slammed down. They told me what they wanted to do, and I was a little panicky about this, but I gave them a fairly high DC Dex check, and each one of them passed it by a hair. We're talking about by 1 point. They both managed to roll under just as this thing slammed down. But it created a new problem. Now we have two people caught between two barriers that can barely open, and two smaller characters that actually can go in and out of the dungeon at will, but are kind of cut off. Now at this point, the ghouls attack, and the halfling slams the door, holds it there, and tells the gnome to get the hell out of there. He jumps out the arrow slit just as the door crumbles down, and the first ghoul attacks and manages to take off a third of the halfling's hit points in just one hit. And she runs out the arrow slit, jumps out, and now we have ghouls just kind of at those arrow slits, just hands just trying to get to whatever. Like all you could see is his hand just trying to grab whatever. And they ended up killing the ghouls, just through the arrow slits with spears or whatever else they had. We didn't roll initiative for that. It was just narrative. Now we have this issue. We got two people stuck in between these doors, and they're starting to remove all the debris in front of the door. They finally do that, and when they get to the door, it's completely locked and latched. And yes, they could break through it, but it's going to take some time. Even the book itself says it's going to take like an hour, if not more, for them just to hack their way through it. So, outside of the pork, the halfling and the gnome enter the arrow slits again, this time on the opposite end of this dungeon. And so now they're crawling through by themselves. And what's so significant about this is that they never split the party. My players are very, very conservative when it comes to this. They never split the party. And they were splitting left and right that night. It was just intense. And so I would go back and forth, skill challenge over here as they're trying to clear the debris. And then the guys inside slowly, stealthily, stealth checks every 30 feet or so. And then when they would come across a hole that was suddenly in the wall that was not natural, not supposed to be there, they listen and listen. A couple more skill challenges and listen. And they keep going a little bit further. And then finally they come to the spot where in the map is where they can hear all these ghouls way off in the distance down this tunnel. And it was a little bit of a dicey moment because they had to cross that to get to the door so they could go hopefully into this whatever was the main foyer to unlock the main door, right? The huge door that was keeping the other players out. Well, the halfling observes the floor, gets it, does a skill check, passes just barely of just where she needs to step to make sure there's no noise. And she looks back and says, "Hey, gnome," that's not his name, Glim or something like that. Or I think we'll call him Ben. Ben, step where I step. Don't deviate from the course, right? Well, he goes out there. I gave him a fairly easy DC check, but it failed, right? So it failed by like another point, like just 1 point off. So he messed up the trail. He hit some debris. It kind of scattered. And now he had to do another stealth check because now he couldn't quite follow where she had laid out this path because he messed up the path, right? So he did another check right afterwards and was able to get past that just barely. And then they tried to open the door, right? The doors are squeaky and noisy. So we did another check there to make sure that, can we open this stealthily enough to make, without alerting this huge, what sounds like a huge pile of ghouls just off to the corner here. Well, they pass that just barely, and they come into the main foyer. Things look pretty clean and clear. They run to the door, unlatch it. Finally, the two other players, and they just barely get this open, two other players finally come in to the dungeon. And let me just say, this whole 4-hour session takes place now right in this foyer. They did not go anywhere else. It took a while just to get them back together again and figure out the porculus and try to get everybody into just the same space. Because at that point, two ghouls came in from the left side of the map and attacked. And now they are trying to break down the intel. Okay, what did you see? What'd you hear? And they said, look, over there on the right side of the map, right side of the dungeon, is even more ghouls. So how do we handle this, right? So what they did is what I call the cheese. We've all done this in video games, right? Where you bang on something, have all the enemy come over one by one in a small little, what's the word I'm looking for? Funnel, kind of like it's the funnel. You funnel them in. And that's what they did. They set up a position right in front of the door there. The paladin wandered over to where the location was, where all these ghouls were, and slammed on the doors and made all kinds of ruckus, all kinds of noise. And here they all come, 2 or 3 at a time, running up to this area and fighting it out. And really the paladin was kind of wiping the floor with them. And then the gnome had his dog breathe fire on some of them, which surprised me. And I love that as a DM. I don't want to know all your powers, right? Because it surprises me as a DM, and it surprised others at the table as players. But he was, his Mastiff, it's kind of celestial. It's not really a real thing. It's another spell. But had called this in. It was breathing fire on gnomes. The halfling did go down because the ghouls, low intelligence, right? They're just going after the easiest kill, which was the halfling. What they did too was the gnome cast an illusion spell in between the halfling and the knight to make it look like there was blockage there. So the ghouls, who didn't know any better, just kind of kept funneling towards the halfling and towards the paladin. And so one by one, they just knocked them out. And that's where we ended it. It probably doesn't sound like a lot. I think even more happened there with even more skill challenges. But it was really an intense. I think that's the word that describes it. It was just so intense because everybody was trying to be so quiet because they couldn't tell just how many ghouls were here. And if all the ghouls and the banshee attacked, it would have been a TPK for sure. There was even one point at the very beginning there where we had the first hit where the halfling took the third of her hit points off. She came out of the dungeon and jumped to the arrow slit, and she looked at everybody and said, okay, is this worth it? Like, I just got hit once and I'm down by like a third. Maybe we should rethink this. There was a glimmer of hope in the DM's eyes, thinking, oh, maybe they won't do this. But I'm so glad they did. I really am so glad they did. Everything was on fire. So you can see some of the changes and some of the things I did. Axeholm played out in a rough kind of way, but in an absolutely fun way. Of course, I'll be ready for it even more next week when we play. You can see the changes I did to Dwarven Excavation and also the changes I did to Gnomengarde, which is now kind of this quest that no longer exists. You can take those or leave them. You can change your campaign as much as you want. I'm hoping to run this a second time, so I really want to make sure that options stay open. And after a time, they do close down to change the narrative and change my second playthrough. All right, guys, we play next Friday, and we continue on with this adventure, or this dungeon crawl. And after that, I don't know. I mean, if anything, hopefully all this will come into play, because I'm at least now locked in for a good 3 more sessions, hopefully. All right, guys, that's it. See you in the next one.